Hello, Cardstack community. My name is Chrissy. I'm the founding director of the Cardstack project, coming to you from the land of the Web3. I'm joined today by Jimmy Nguyen, who is the founding president of the Bitcoin Association of BSV. He has been a thought leader about what we can do with blockchain, focus on applications and industry use cases, and making blockchain useful, and also providing scalable platform for serious business. So welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you so much for having me. Look forward to speaking with you.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your role within Bitcoin Association. I know you have an announcement a little while ago, and what is that changing, and how do you believe that your role within the community will evolve?
Sure. So for the last several years, I have been the founding president of the global organization that supports BitcoinSV. I helped found the organization. I'm one of its founding members. And I basically lead the overall growth of the BitcoinSV community. All of the major blockchains have a foundation, like the Ethereum Foundation. So our organization is also formed in Zug, Switzerland, in Crypto Valley. And I have led a team of people all across the world that supports the technical infrastructure, education, policy, developer education, investment in the growth of BitcoinSV. For your listeners, I think the main thing to understand about, well, why is there a different version of Bitcoin? That gets confusing for people. Yes. And it's because there have been debates over many years in Bitcoin's history about whether the Bitcoin network should be allowed to scale bigger. The BTC network and its protocol developers chose to keep the block size of BTC small, at 1 megabyte in size, but with a block weight of up to 4 megabytes. That means you cannot do very many transactions on chain. Right. At maximum about 3 to 7 transactions per second. The transaction fee vacillates between sometimes 70 US cents to 40 US dollars plus sometimes. And that's why we have seen that the BTC network isn't really used for daily payments, which is what Bitcoin, in our view, was created to do by Satoshi Nakamoto. And so there are contingents of the Bitcoin world that split off, first to Bitcoin Cash, which we supported for a while, and then BitcoinSV, Satoshi Vision, to unleash a much more scalable, bigger block, bigger data and transaction capacity for the network to power payments down to the micro and nano level, to reinvent how the internet works, kind of like how Elon Musk is trying to do if he takes over Twitter, but also to use the network for data applications like smart contracts and tokens, which people have been trying to do on Ethereum. We think that was all possible on Bitcoin's protocol, but it was locked down in size and capacity. So we're just letting it be unlocked to its full potential and supporting massive scaling. So that's what BitcoinSV is. It's a competing chain of Bitcoin, which is at 4 gigabyte blocks now, which is 4,000 plus megabytes, not 1. So 4,000 plus the capacity of BTC, and with median transaction fees to send a payment of 1/20th to 1/100th of a US cent. So we think that unlocks much more capabilities for use. And that's the main thing that brought me into this industry from my legal career, which is I wanted to see blockchain become the next technology platform that was really useful for the world, like the internet became. And to do that, we need scale, we need useful applications to get past the world we live in now of just speculative crypto and NFT trading.
What's really interesting about you're focusing on the useful application is that most useful application demands a lot of storage of data. If we were to do music on the blockchain, just think about how many pieces of distinct music that's on Spotify. That's the market, right? If you're going to do a supply chain, think about how many product is in Walmart. That's the data. So what do you think is the developers and people who are thinking about using blockchain, do they have to choose between enterprise blockchain, which has a certain types of model and promise of scalability, versus something like BitcoinSV, which is a public ledger but has that scalability? What are you seeing the communication to people who are making those choices?
Well, we're trying to offer them a platform where they don't have to make the choice. We position BSV as the blockchain for enterprise and government, as well as consumers. We think it's the all-in-one, where you have on one blockchain the ability to send both small payments down to the 1 cent or less level, as well as to support supply chain, music, government data applications. For enterprise level applications to work on blockchain, you hit the nail on the head. You need a blockchain that can handle two things: bigger data capacity. So you can put files of larger size, such as a music or even a whole movie file, or lots of data, lots of supply chain product information, right, of many, many products. And you have to be able to do that at high transaction volume for very low cost, right, and fast speed. Because if you are putting music files or a lot of supply chain data on a blockchain, it can't cost 80 US cents, 20 US dollars per data transaction. It's far too much. I was on a virtual webinar earlier today of the American Apparel and Footwear Association, the trade organization for all the major clothing footwear brands.
Right.
And we were talking about NFT and blockchain usage, including for possibly tracking counterfeit, preventing counterfeit products, right, to confirm the authenticity of products. And if every item, a pair of sneakers, came with an NFT to track its authenticity, think about how many blockchain transactions that is.
Right.
It can't cost 80 US cents per data transaction. And so for enterprise to really embrace blockchain, they need a chain like BSV that can hold lots of data for lots of transactions at very low cost. We can do that for under a penny per transaction. NFTs are a perfect example, right? When people try to mint NFTs now of digital art on Ethereum, it can cost 80 US dollars sometimes to mint an NFT. On BSV, you can mint a digital art NFT for less than a penny.
Yes, it's really interesting, right? Because I actually built the first NFT platform on Bitcoin, and that at the time all you had is op return, so most of it is a pointer to something else, and we had a cloud platform to do that, and we are still doing that today in Ethereum space, right? Because you can't really store a lot of metadata. Some do, but most have some additional storage. But sometimes very hard to associate it. In 10 years, will that additional records still be available? Usage of Arweave and like IPFS for storage is a fraction of the NFT market. So in the NFT that you're seeing in the BitcoinSV, do you see people storing more of the media file and the metadata as well as the ownership record on the blockchain itself?
Yes, yes, and yes. You hit the nail on the head because of our bigger data capacity. When you put data on a blockchain, as you know, you pay for amount of data, right? The bigger the data file size, the more you pay. And so that's why people actually, when they make NFTs on Ethereum, what people don't realize is the actual asset itself probably does not live on chain. It lives on IPFS or an AWS server off chain because it's too expensive to put the whole digital art file, let alone a music or movie file on chain. You can put the whole music file or digital art file on BSV for a lot less. And that's why people are putting the actual asset as well as the ownership record on chain, which unlocks much more powerful capabilities. And I'm glad you mentioned, you try to make NFTs with, Bitcoin BTC with op return, because op return, for people who don't know, is a opcode, operating code in the Bitcoin script language, which is a primitive computing language in the Bitcoin net protocol. And op return is a field in which people often will embed data for tokens or, in your case, NFTs. On BTC, the op return data size, I believe, is still limited to 100 kilobytes, which is very small. Right? You cannot put a JPEG image into op return because most JPEGs are several megabytes now.
Yes.
And we have lifted the op return cap in BSV to much larger, and that's why people are able to use op return to embed much larger data files. People on BSV have even uploaded entire movie files, feature-length movie files. Now, I don't recommend that. I don't think that's necessary for every use case. Right. But I'll give you an example. One of our BSV ventures last year minted 175,000 digital content NFTs. Right. On Ethereum, that probably would have cost 10 million US dollars. Right. They were able to do it for 175 US dollars total, including putting the digital art assets actually written to the chain.
Yeah, it's really interesting for preservation to be able to have the metadata and the content, which is presumably important. You can argue that the digital rights or the commercial rights more or less important. That's just, I think, per asset. But there's a preservation problem. I was speaking with a person who does early NFT archaeology. A lot of the early NFT either lost its pairing with the thing, so it would be really easy, and we know that things that are older and things that has more legacy tend to be more available later on. So this idea of using the blockchains as preservation, which is very good at, it certainly adds an opportunity to offer the future archaeologists a better, more safe, secure way to say, hey, I found everything here and it's right next to each other in op return, right?
Absolutely, and it's more than just for preservation. One of my friends who works in the BSV space as well as the broader blockchain space, he's launched a new company called NiftyCo, which is creating an NFT minting service. It supports multiple chains and will be adding BSV. But one of the things they're doing is allowing the minting in a single NFT asset of an NFT that contains multiple types of assets within the same file. So for example, think about if you are a music artist and you want to mint an NFT that gives the owner the rights to the actual play the music file itself, right? The MP3 file, album cover art, the right to a ticket to meet the artist at a show. Yes. Having the ability in one file on the blockchain to layer in multiple related assets is a very powerful tool that would be cost prohibitive on Ethereum to do on chain. But you can create a file essentially where a single NFT represents multiple linked assets. And I think doing that on a bigger scale chain, which allows you to do it for very low fees, opens up a lot of opportunities for creators and brands.
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at not only about the asset type itself, but one of the thing we were trying to do back in the days was the project's called Monograph. It was a commercial version. The original Monograph was the original NFT, and that's if you Google NFT in Wikipedia, Kevin McCoy and Neil Dash created first NFT. They brought me in to run the CTO and build the commercial version. So that was on that was predated ERC20 and the Ethereum by a couple of years. But when we were doing that, one of the things we realized, and we're talking to lawyers, is that each one of these things, the ticket, the files, or even the commercial rights on the contract to use the file, could be separate assets. Right. So you can imagine them not only bundled into a zip file within a op return, but you can think of them as three different assets associated together, sold together in the beginning, and maybe sold partially apart. And this requires something that we couldn't really do in the BTC project because of the limited scriptability. You mentioned that there's a smart contract capability within the BitcoinSV. Yes. How would I go ahead and today use the BitcoinSV blockchain to do this? You buy the bundle, but you can split it apart and sell the commercial rights or the contract to someone else. How would I do that? Obviously, you can do that in Ethereum and people do this. Right. I just want to get your thoughts about doing that on BSV.
Yes, there are several smart contract approaches. I want to take this moment to debunk a myth that I hear all the time when I speak across the world, which people say to me, Jimmy, great, your BSV scales Bitcoin bigger, but you cannot do smart contracts on Bitcoin. And that's just wrong. And I think it's because BTC's restrictions, not just in data size, but restricting some of the technical capabilities of the Bitcoin script language, made people think that. In reality, you can. And one of the brightest entrepreneurs in our space, Xiaohui Liu, has a company called Script, which has developed a high-level smart contract language on Bitcoin using BSV, the original Bitcoin protocol, and it is the equivalent to Ethereum Solidity, right, which is their high-level programming language. So you can use it to create these type of smart contracts. And more importantly, at our BSV Global Blockchain Convention in Dubai, which was just a few weeks ago, at the end of May, he announced and unveiled a project we've been having him work on for a while, which is a transpiler. If you go to transpiler.bitcoinsv.com, you can put in an Ethereum smart contract, and it will automatically translate it to a BSV smart contract.
Yes.
And it will cost about 1/1000th of the transaction fees to actually implement on BSV, because we're trying to demonstrate you can do Ethereum smart contracts on BSV for a lot less, and the Bitcoin protocol allows it. In addition to his company, there's another team called Tokenized out of Australia, which has a smart contract and token platform. It's web-based, that is designed more for financial instruments, but they also do things such as like rewards tokens and tickets, where it allows a user, let's say a business, to put in terms that are more like human language contracts, common contract provisions, and then we'll convert them to smart contract functions on the BSV blockchain to make it easier for the ordinary business, right, who doesn't have, Bitcoin blockchain coders and developers to translate the terms of common financial instrument contracts or tickets or rewards point provisions, which are pretty boilerplate, and convert them into smart contract language. So our ecosystem has been really focused on trying to make blockchain easier to use so that it's more useful. Part of the problem we see is that so much of Bitcoin and blockchain and crypto has been too caught up in what I call the crypto sort of little bubble, right, where it's too hard to use wallets, it's too hard to make smart contracts. If we want this to be useful for the business world, this needs to get easier. So those are ways in which we've been pushing in our ecosystem to deliver smart contract capability at much, much, much less cost than you do in Ethereum.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that if you think about like a template for a contract that people do in the wetware world, it's usually a template and has some stuff, and you just fill in what you need.
Yes.
And that really doesn't exist despite the name. Like when I first heard about the smart contract name, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's like a contract, and it's nothing like it's a program,
it's nothing.
right?
No, yeah. And I was a lawyer for 21 years, as you know, and so I used to live in the world of contracts. And most business contracts and agreements are not appropriate for blockchain smart contracts. Blockchain smart contracts are rather what we call dumb contracts, right? They work best with agreements where there are very basic conditions.
Yes.
If, for example, travel insurance. If I buy travel insurance for my airplane flight, if my flight is more than 2 hours late landing, which you can verify through Oracle data from, let's say, the FAA or government websites, then I get paid automatically X amount to my Bitcoin wallet as my compensation for a late flight. Something like that works very easily on a smart contract.
Yep.
And you can automate that by creating boilerplate insurance agreements. Buy this insurance for this amount, put in your flight information, put in the the number of hours late that it will be and what your compensation will be. That is very repeatable.
Yep.
So I think where I'm trying to push is the industry to create templates that are web-based, that don't require a lot of coding. Think about, how it's like WordPress for smart contracts, right? WordPress made it so much easier for normal people and businesses to make websites and powers a lot of the websites of the world because we don't have to learn HTML coding. We need the same thing for smart contracts, and that's what we're trying to really deploy on BSV.
It's really resonate with me. I built a lot of blockchain application initially on Bitcoin and then on Ethereum when that became kind of possible. And I realized that most of the time I'm rebuilding the same thing over and over again. If you look at even the NFT marketplace, the minting contract, how much work people have done for essentially 4 fields, right? Like, it is really not that difficult. And so some of the things we are doing is essentially doing a form and code generator that creates a meta model in JavaScript because that's what people understand in the UI, and then a translator of that into the various smart contract component. Now, we don't generate smart contracts. It is very hard to do, especially in the Ethereum space, to do that securely. But if there's parameter, you can map it. So I like the idea of like this dumb contract. We call them parametric contracts. So once we know what the parameters is, we can now map the parameter on chain to our UI generator, and then we can put them in, right? And it's very hard to, I see a lot of like smart contract generator, you have the transpiler thing, that's pretty cool, but it's probably better for someone who knows Script or Solidity to orchestrate the thing, declare the parameters, and map it. So that's kind of our approach. But you are completely in line with that. People need to be able to describe what they want to do and get the blockchain to work for them without having to say, we're the developers, because for a while there was none.
Bingo, 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 bingo. Yeah.
So when you're looking at the possibility of bringing more users to this system, obviously one of the big challenges is the wallet experience, right? There are different wallets. A lot of them, while they support many of the protocol, including your chain, they tend to look like a trading system. So when everything looks like a trading stock thing, it's very hard to tell them the use case of this, what this can give them. So what is your view about like the wallet? Like what do we need to get the wallet developers to do to bridge the gap between the perception of crypto blockchain to the potential that we probably already achieved in terms of infrastructure, but just not in understanding?
I think that's a great question, and it's the thing that scares my friends, right, from trying to enter the crypto digital asset world. It all looks very scary. Luckily, we already have a few great wallets on BSV that have already tackled the challenge. One of the most popular is called Handcash. It's a mobile wallet. You can get it on iOS as well as Android, and it is the most user-friendly wallet I've seen, where it does not, for example, use Bitcoin legacy addresses anymore. It uses a handle system. So when you create your wallet, no more seed words, by the way. It has a system for getting rid of seed words, but you can still recover your wallet if necessary. You create a handle, like mine is Jimmy Nguyen, my Twitter handle, WIN. And once you have your handle, it basically represents your public key. And so people can send you BSV just knowing your handle. They obviously can't withdraw from your wallet, but it's like just, and that makes it so much easier, right? People tip me because I'm, known in the BSV world. They'll send me a penny, 2 pennies, etc. And that is what is so much more understandable to the average person, right? They don't want to have to deal with, the Bitcoin wallet addresses. And so they do that, and it also, through their app, links to multiple games, social media, and other apps on BSV, where people can use the wallet to then pay to play games and earn money back. It all links to a common wallet. So it becomes sort of like a super app, right? That is a more fun experience. And you can top up, they use Circle on the back end, so you can pay with a credit card to, get more BSV into your wallet. SetB is another one on BSV out of South Africa that is a little bit more traditional, but it doesn't use a handle system, but it links to contacts in your phone. And therefore, once you know people's contacts and phone numbers, the app can send, BSV to other of your friends and contacts. But it also provides mechanisms to pay for like your utilities, to pay for gift cards, which then convert to the ability to pay merchants. So it's becoming a more youth generation focused environment to pay for things. That's the kind of development I think that is necessary to get away from the wallets which hold 500 coins and really focus on trading, right? A lot of them link to trading, and that's not. I want to see a world where digital currencies are actually used in daily life, where people are not buying them just to get rich, right? Which is why most people buy coins. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but Bitcoin was created to solve the problem of the internet not having a native way to send small payments, and so we want to see a world where people are using their BSV when they're tweeting, right, to eliminate bot accounts where you have to actually pay maybe a penny to tweet, but then people tip you back when they respond and engage with your tweets or your Instagram posts, and where you're playing to earn games and you're making small amounts of money, where you have to maybe pay to do a Google internet search, but you get better quality search results because there's no sponsored links. I want to see a world where I don't like paying for digital newspaper subscriptions on a monthly or annual basis, but sometimes I see an article and I just would pay 20 cents to read it at that given moment. That could be taken out of a wallet. But for that to happen, you need to have a scalable blockchain where it doesn't cost $10 to send an Ethereum transaction, or $20, or even 70 cents to send a BTC transaction. You need a chain like ours where the transaction fee is well under a penny. So if we have systems like that, whether it's a mobile wallet or a browser wallet that links to actual applications that the everyday person can use to read newspaper articles, to play games, to post on social media, then I think we'll see a much more useful world.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned payment being the original white paper use case, and we seem to forgotten it, right? Like we like to
totally forgotten it.
How do we forget that, right? It's about that peer-to-peer cash-like experience in your wallet, in your custody. What do you think is the adoption gap? Is it the fiat on-ramp? You mentioned the integration with Circle and some of these wallets. Do people still think that this connection to the financial system as we exist today on the merchant side and on onboarding side is a requirement? What's your thoughts about how do you get people around? Those experiences are not great, by the way. Some of them requires KYC.
They're terrible.
It's like, what's your thoughts on ramps?
I think there's two main problems. The first problem is beating out of people's mindset that cryptocurrencies are there as an investment. right? That's what they become. BTC now has the narrative of being a store of value, digital gold, right? Which of course is not a very reliable store of value given the market crashes over the last couple of weeks.
Does move.
But that's not what it was created to be. It was meant to be a daily electronic cash system. So we have to get that out of people's mindset about why digital currencies exist, because that is why the people are willing to go through the difficulties of the fiat on-ramp process with exchanges, because they're buying the coins because they're hoping to buy coins and wait for the price to go up and trade them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we have to create what I call an earn and use economy, as opposed to just buy and hold, right? That's the world we live in now. If this is meant to be a system that powers daily economy in the digital world, we have to have ways in which people are earning BSV or whatever coin or tokens in daily life and having outlets to use them and reasons to use them. Right now, there's not enough reasons to use your digital currency other than buying NFTs these days. And by earning, I mean not just in salary. Not just, okay, the mayor of New York taking the salary or mayor of Miami
3 months,
taking
2
salary.
months, yeah.
Right. I'm talking about in our digital life, right? When I tweet and people respond back to me, are they sending me small micropayments when I'm playing games? For example, one of my ideas is, we give our location data through mobile apps often, right? And I never authorize it for beyond when I'm using the app. It's only when I'm using the app, right? I'll authorize it. But that's very valuable. And what if someone developed a system where you were incentivized to provide your location data even when you're not in the app, and you got paid for every 3 minutes or whatever, small micropayments? That's the world I'm thinking about, where we're all incentivized through many ways to be earning digital currency in big and small amounts, and then having ways to use them that we enjoy. Every time you recycle a bottle, right, and you scan a QR code, you get a small amount of money. Every time you exercise and it's monitored on your Fitbit or whatever, maybe you're earning small rewards tokens. So that, I think, would lead more and more people to actually be using digital currency in daily life. That's not the world that exists now. And that's what a lot of BSV companies are trying to move towards. But again, it requires scale. You cannot do this with Ethereum transaction fees of 20, 40 US dollars, right? Because you're not going to pay someone a lot of money to recycle a bottle or to tweet something. And it's interesting because Elon Musk, with his talk of acquiring Twitter, has been talking about this, right? How do we create a new micro payment economy for Twitter? Or even Jack Dorsey, who we disagree with on a lot of things, with his Web5, announcement, trying to make Bitcoin the infrastructure for a new whole Web 7, 8 system that requires a network that can scale. So I think that's what needs to happen to change the dynamic into one where Bitcoin, BSV, whatever coin it is actually used in daily life. We need ways to earn it, not just a salary. Because think about it, we only spend money once we get it, right? The problem is we have this system now where you have to onboard through exchanges, go through that difficult KYC funds transfer process to buy coins, but there's no real reason to then use them.
So it's both hard to get and hard to use, and we have seen some situation in the community where there's airdrops to existing wallet, and you see that more on Web3 and Ethereum. That is very healthy because you look at those increasingly sophisticated airdrop, they look more and more like a rewards program for customer loyalty and customer acquisition. So this idea of using the data that exists on chain in a relationship as a way to spend your advertising customer acquisition cost, it's such a good alignment between things that marketer understands and the things that the consumer needs to engage. God knows how many times I choose a credit card because of the rewards I get on them.
Yep, I know, me too. But once we get the rewards, whether it's an airdrop or earning them through activity, I think there needs to be more applications and ways to use them. Right? Because that's why a lot of my friends, what they'll say to me, oh, Jimmy, I bought X and X coin. No, why didn't the price go up? They're just waiting for the price to go up, as opposed to having enough outlets and incentives to use them. If you buy something using the coin, do you get a discount? Is there games to play with it? Are there things, right, where you have a reason to use the coin? With that said, I will also say that I think the industry has to consolidate. There are far too many coins. It's just stupid. It's just silly. The world does not need this many coins. And it's confusing to the average person. And that won't happen, immediately. But I think the industry will eventually consolidate to hopefully, some dominant chains and coins, and maybe some rewards coins from different brands and things.
And obviously, we see more and more denomination in stablecoin for certain activity, and there are chains that can support them. What is your view of stablecoin as a driver? Because some chains really bet on that. We have a test implementation of our payment system, which works really, really well on the mainnet basis on what used to be XDAI chain, which is a stablecoins denominated chain. That made sense for our payment use case that we have launched in our iOS and Android wallet that we've done. What's your view on stablecoin in that story you just talked about?
I'm actually a believer in stablecoins if done appropriately. And not all BSV people agree with me. I've talked to some, they think, we can just use native BSV given its efficiency. You don't need stablecoins. I'm actually involved with helping one of the BSV entrepreneurs launch a new business that is going to be, issuing stablecoins of all leading world fiat currencies on BSV given its greater efficiencies. And the reason I believe that's important is blockchain, to me, whatever blockchain it is just going to be plumbing in the future. In a future world, the ordinary person is not going to care whether they're spending an Ethereum coin or a BSV coin or whatever coin. If they're spending a digital US dollar, a digital euro, a digital British pound in their games or on their social media, that's all they care about. It's only the crypto, fanatics that get into these tribal warfares over my coin's better than your coin or my chain's better than your chain. Blockchain, like the internet, should just be like plumbing to make money transfer more efficient. And so stable coins help address that, because for the average person, then they don't have to worry or even think about what chain it's on, what wallet I need. In addition, it addresses the volatility question. People don't want to feel like, hey, I earned, $3 of X coin. Why did it drop down to $1.50, tomorrow? So I'm a big believer in them. I also think that central bank digital currencies can be issued on blockchain, and there's a leading BSV company, N-Chain, that is talking to some central banks about trying to pilot CBDCs on BSV. So I think blockchains like BSV can be the base ledger for stablecoins, CBDCs, as well as use of the native coin. I think all of it's possible. Not everyone agrees. Some people think, we should just not need stablecoins. With that said, given what's happened with Terra, Luna, the controversies over whether Tether is fully backed, I think we need to stablecoins will only survive if they are done in a much more compliant manner where people have confidence in the backing. These algorithmic ones where there's like a coin on top of a coin, that to me, that is a recipe for disaster.
And as a lawyer, do you see the recent attention to try, at least in the US, to move a little bit further on those asset-backed requirements for the issuer to have certain disclosure and type of qualification? Do you think that's a positive thing for the industry?
I do think it's a positive thing, and not everyone in the crypto world likes regulation. As a lawyer, it's not that I love law, it's just I know it's the practical reality if we want to see this industry grow to global usage where there's confidence of governments, consumers, and institutional investors. So I think I don't want to see another world where people lose 99% of the value they've invested into Terra Luna. That's just ridiculous. And the only way to prevent that in the future is to unfortunately require either much more disclosures or make it more difficult to have these algorithmic, less fully backed type coins, because it's we do have to protect the consumer. And I know that the early crypto Bitcoin fans don't like hearing that, and that's one way the BSV ecosystem is very different. I fully appreciate the crypto libertarian viewpoint, right? But I also believe it's important to have law and order. Do we want this world to stay only used by crypto hobbyists, or do we want blockchain and these digital assets to be used by billions of people around the world? To get the big global usage, you have to make law and compliance front of mind.
Yes, and it's a confidence that allows people to dip their toe on it. If it's like, oh, I want to dip that toe, and someone just drown in it, someone literally drown in it, and it's harder to get the next person to experiment with the joy of swimming, right? The joy of the open ocean, right? And I completely agree that the right balance of the right type of regulation, and I think the industry has been good. I'm part of some blockchain policy working group as a technologist, providing context of what actually goes on in these programs and these DeFi contracts. But I think a good type of recommendation with regulators who care to learn.
Yes.
It's important.
For example, I also think exchanges need more oversight. There was, reports over the last couple of days that the SEC has sent to at least one, leading exchange inquiry about what type of procedures it has to prevent insider trading, for example, before certain events. Even though it's, you can debate whether these coins are securities or not, I think that's a legitimate question, right? How do you, if you are working at an exchange and you know certain things about to happen, a coin's about to get listed or there's trouble with a particular coin, should people within the exchange be allowed to be trading on their own to benefit one way or the other? I think that's a very legitimate question.
Yeah, and the industry has to look at self-regulations, whether that's an SRO or some other things as the precursor to that. Because I think if the world look at us as like, hey, we're libertarian and we don't care, it's hard to be invited to the table when they do care and say, hey, what can you share with us? Like, well, this has worked in the work that we've done before.
Yeah. Like one point I'll make is I find it very curious every time there's these huge market drops in price. A lot of the exchanges will all of a sudden, have maintenance or stop trading withdrawals of BTC, right? Which some people will say, will say that if they're more conspiratorial in nature, say, well, that's their attempt to try and prevent the BTC price from completely collapsing, right? Because there's so much of the industry is dependent on BTC staying at certain levels. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but it's a trend a number of people notice, right? Should exchanges be able to do that, or under what conditions? Right now, there's not really any legal regulations about that. Whereas if you have public companies with stock exchanges, right, there are policies about the halting of trading of public stock, public company stock in certain situations.
Yeah, and I think these type of rules evolve, but I think there's a lot to learn from existing solutions, right? The same risk, same regulation is some of the jurisdiction lean towards that. I'm not sure if the U.S. really abide by that. It's same rules, fight for whether you have jurisdiction. It seems to be what's going on. What's interesting to me is that the blockchain solution can actually help a lot of these these government understands that because the data is there, we can go investigate, we can go learn in an open way, and you can make a different interpretation. But we are doing this in the open, as they say, both in terms of software and in data and state. Are there other things that you want to share with us that excite you most, especially as you embark on the next chapter in your journey in crypto and beyond, that you want to share with the audience?
Sure. Well, today, as you saw on social media, I announced that after years of leading the Bitcoin Association for BSV, I will be stepping down from my role as founding president in September. So I'm around for a few more months, and I'm not leaving BSV world. I'm a huge advocate of it. But I have a lot of business opportunities around the world presenting themselves to me, and I'm going to go help drive more business growth on BSV. The things I'm excited about range. The game and esports world, I think, is a ripe area for all blockchain usage, particularly with BSV, with its micropayment capabilities, where there are companies creating platforms. For example, a company called Haste Arcade in the US, where they have this instant leaderboard payout concept, which can plug into any type of game. I'll use this analogy. The old days, you would go to the video arcade, stick in a quarter, right, to play Pac-Man or Tetris or whatever. Right? If you got on the leaderboard, you got to put in your initials, but you didn't get any money. Yeah. Well, their system allows any game to use their platform. The player pays to some amount to play whatever game, and then if they get on a leaderboard, which you set 10, top 20, whatever, every player that comes after you that does not beat your score, you get a tiny fraction of their amount of money that's paid. I think it's like a very brilliant concept. They've also been approached by government representatives in South Africa to think about how to use that platform to help gamify educational systems, to encourage young people to do more educational activities. So I think that kind of game plus social good usage of micropayments with BSV is very exciting. In addition to the general esports things like making, NFTs, virtual items and avatars, on the blockchain. In addition, we're very focused on BSV more than other blockchains on government and enterprise use of the blockchain. So that's why I've been spending a lot of time in the Middle East over the last couple of years. We just held our big BSV Global Blockchain Convention in Dubai a few weeks ago at the end of May. We have initiated discussion. We have become the blockchain knowledge partner with the UAE's Ministry of Human Resources and Emeritization. One of our key companies out there, InvoiceMate and MateSoul, has already deployed projects with the Sindh Police Department in Pakistan, where they're tracking, for example, like police resource data of the police station on blockchain, so that and have a public record of how much ammunition the police department has in and out of its inventory on a given day.
Right.
What's the gun count? They're also going to be putting what are called first FIRs, first investigation reports, on recording them to blockchain, which are, think about it, when you report a crime, let's say to the police, there are sometimes incidents where people believe law enforcement might change or manipulate reports that are made. By using blockchain to hash or digitally fingerprint records and timestamp them, which is what a blockchain really does, to the chain, you can have more data integrity in what was the accuracy of whatever the report was made at a given time. So they're working with the Sindh Police Department in Pakistan, an agricultural agency as well in the region. We have a project going on with the University of Sharjah in the UAE to create a platform to track academic and professional certifications on blockchain to cut down on fraud when people lie about their
certificate and accreditations type of like intersection, right?
Yes, and especially not just to prevent lying about whether you have a certification, but sometimes certifications only last for a certain period of time, right? And you have to renew them. And blockchains, again, are a time stamping mechanism, which is a perfect vehicle for being able to quickly determine whether my certification in whatever information privacy professional law is still valid. So those are the types of uses I'm actually very excited about. They're basic and kind of, I don't want to say boring. They're not the crypto fund trading things people think about, but all a blockchain is data infrastructure, right? It's if you go back to the Bitcoin white paper, it doesn't even use the word blockchain.
Nope.
It uses distributed timestamp server. It's a timestamping of records of events, a payment of Bitcoin from me to you, the fact that I have a certification of this degree, the fact that I bought an NFT and transferred it on date and time to you, and making that published and distributed to the world. So these uses where data and information can be verified publicly. The last example I'll give is with COVID vaccination tracking. There's a startup on BSV in the US called VX Technologies, which has an application which allows the tracking of your COVID vaccinations by date and time, where the time apart on which you got shots is important to know, right, for the validity of them. And they are deploying it in the small country of Lesotho in the bottom of Africa to be the official COVID vaccination tracking application for the country, as well as some other African countries.
Yeah,
so
that's a lot more advanced than the one we have in the United States, the CDC card.
Yeah, in the US, I have it right here. I have my little paper CDC card. When I go around the world and show this to people, they think it's funny that this is what we have in the US.
And we think of that as a very important thing. I still remember the person who jabbed me first. It's like, think of that as like an official like birth certificate. It's like, oh, this is a different world that I was expecting in 2021 or 2020, whenever that was.
But that's why scalability, high transaction volume, low fees is important for those use cases I've just described, whether you're tracking all the degrees and professional certifications of an entire university, or tracking COVID vaccinations of a whole country. Each of those transactions is a data event on the chain for which someone has to be paying a fee, and someone has to pay a fee every time the data is read. And that's why it can't be 80 US cents, $2 per transaction of data. It needs to be a penny less. And that's why BSV.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for enlightening us. I mean, the use cases you describe is concrete. Someone is doing it with someone, going through not just pilots, but implementation and hitting real people. And I think there's not enough of exposure in the mainstream press about crypto, especially when crypto is going up, and all they can think is that it's a $100 million club. And then once it's low, it's like it crashed 60%, and they don't actually discuss that we're making real progress on things we were just talking about a few years ago that's actually happening on the ground. So it's always great to get those read from the field, and I think the crypto community owe a lot to your advocacy and your understanding to try to explain to people there is work to be done, but we're getting closer. So thank you for that.
We are, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, and as always, the community support and allow us to be able to tell the story and record the story in a way. Maybe I'll put this on the BSV blockchain, this video. That we
can help you do that.
That we are actually making progress, not in terms of just the technology development, but the narrative that this is something that will be relevant to you, whether it's the next cycle or next year. And please watch out for the development in various community. Obviously, Cardstack is a EVM-based project. I think I have credibility having done op return back in 2014 to be able to say that I'm part of the Bitcoin BTC community and the BitcoinSV community. So I, as a person who have done it all, we're on the same boat. It's just about bringing user onto this new possibility, and I think we're gonna do it.
Yeah. No matter what chain or coin you support, I don't get into those tribal debates as much. Just try to make blockchain useful.
That's a great thing. Let's make blockchain useful. And as always, thank you so much for the community for your time, and thank you, Jimmy, for joining us. And until next time, take care.